Sweet are the dreams of yesteryear, of times you never saw. Sweet are the dreams of villainy, to suit your present trial. Sweet are the dreams that take you back, and bid you what if could have been, and if only it wasn't in the never was, that never comes. Bittersweet the bursting of the dream, to know those before did not do as you see with hindsight they should. Bittersweet to know that those hereafter will think the same when their dreams have soured. Bittersweet to think that those before thought the same of theirs, in the never was that never comes. Bitter sour to face ahead, to break this burden, rotten dead. Bitter vow that you would never see the fruit of this work, but sweeter yet than any else, a future destined with blood everlasting in hell. The dream is them. They are the dream that is yet to begin. An eternity in bloom, a flicker in flower, a flicker, an eternity in you. Evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome this evening to the UK update with on Mimmir's Council Live. I'm joined tonight by Steed and Rhys, who's joining us. As he's hard to get out of his nest there, but he's joined us because Adric tonight can't be with us. He's having he's actually getting his internet improved, so hopefully he'll be back soon with better connection because he's been having a bit of choppy connection. But hope everybody is well. The madness is still going on. Chaos still ensuing all over the place, whether it be Black Lives Matter, race baiting, or this coronavirus, which is something we talk a little bit more about here on Mimmir's Council, the UK side, because it's probably a little bit more of a bigger story that's going on here at the moment, and it's more in our face, whereas obviously over there in America, on the show I do on Saturday evenings with Racial Consciousness, there is the coronavirus stuff going on there still. I mean, it's, like I say, it's just madness, and over there we call it Clown World. It's just a bit mad. So tonight we're going to be talking, like I say, like last week, a little bit about what's going on here in the UK. But before I do that, I just want to mention and make sure everybody knows to join us on our LBRY. There's a link in the description if you're on YouTube that will automatically connect you to our site and follow us if you've already got an account. And if you don't have an account, it will actually prompt you to make one. And I really do suggest people do make LBRY accounts, because especially with Mimmir's Council, we don't know how long we'll be here. We've already got a warning for our video Media Lives Matter, which you can still find on LBRY. And you know, we're pretty open with what we talk about here. We don't really hold back on how we feel about things, and you know, it's probably going to get us booted from YouTube at some point. We're still suffering some really pretty heavy censorship. We've been doing some numbers with RC and trying to work out why it's happening, but we're completely suppressed on Twitter. As soon as we do a post that mentions Mimmir's Council, or anybody does a post that mentions Mimmir's Council, the reach of that post becomes almost minuscule. We can talk in tens at certain points. So we're hoping LBRY is actually going to do some live streams, going to host live streaming soon as well, so that'd be great, and it actually be good in a way just to get completely off of YouTube, to be totally honest with you. It's kind of a tedious task here, and our D-Live is growing at the moment as well. That's something I want to note, so if you haven't followed us over there, please do as well, because that is growing. Our audiences are pretty much equal now between YouTube and D-Live, which is good to see. But anyway, I'll introduce the guest tonight, and I'll start with Steed, as he's an ever-present. So how are you doing tonight, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, Phil. Yeah, good, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to be here, and it's always nice to speak to Phil and Rhys, two great guys with two great channels. So yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, mate. And how are you doing tonight, Rhys? The less vocal of us all. But now, for anyone that doesn't know, Rhys is the editing genius behind our more put together videos, as opposed to our. And he's the graphics guy here. All these graphics were done by Rhys.
Yeah, I'm doing well, mate. It's morning here at the moment, though, in Australia, down under.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a UK-Australian update tonight. Now, we will talk about Australia a little bit because there's been some developments over there with some stuff. But first thing I want to jump to this evening, which is something that we just heard about before we came on air tonight, And it's a bit of a non-story, but it just kind of shows the craziness and the hype that's going around with the coronavirus situation. Here you go. The title, of this article is Coronavirus Major Incident Declared in Greater Manchester. Steve showed me this just before we came on, and I'll let Steve explain this to you because he's had a little read through it. So what's going on here, mate? Or what's not going on, should we ask?
Yeah, well, it's a strange one, this, because I am actually in the Greater Manchester area, and the so-called lockdown restrictions have been changed recently up here. And the only real change from the rest of the country is that people whereas the requirement that for people not to meet in numbers greater than 6 in their garden or home had been dropped everywhere else, it's been reinstated in Greater Manchester. So you can go to the pub with various strangers, you can go to the shops, to the gym, to restaurants, whatever. But for some strange reason, you can no longer meet with more than 6 people in your home. Yeah, the BBC just in the last couple of hours have run an article with the headline "Coronavirus Major Incident Declared in Greater Manchester." My wife showed it to me. I had a look, and there's no incident whatsoever. There's been no incident at all. The incident that they're talking about is this slight change in rules for this region of the country. It's it's difficult to know what to say about it. I mean, I can only commentate on it that it's just psychological mind games that they're playing here. You know, it's just fear-based mind control. As has been the case with so much of this. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing this. I mean, I think I've got another story up here just to show. And what this does actually expose, though, is the fact that it's a non-story. The whole event is a non-story, and everything they do. I mean, as you said there, with these new restrictions, they're stopping people meeting in more than 6 in their own gardens, but you can do everything else. So this is going to have no effect. If it was a real, if there was a real pandemic level virus spreading around this country, that would do nothing. What they're doing here is really just showing us the nonsense of the whole scenario, because it won't help. Let me get this. I haven't got the story. Oh yeah, I do have the story up here. This is a great one. Coronavirus. Pubs may need to shut to allow schools to reopen. So for some reason, for schools to have less of a chance of spreading the virus, pubs need to shut. I don't know what that says about the teachers or what they're doing with their pastime, but it's again, these measures are being brought in that are going to have that if this was a virus that could had the potential to kill millions of people here in the UK, something like that would do nothing, right? Right, Steve? I mean, what can that actually possibly do? Yeah, with both of those stories. And these are not the only stories either. I could probably, if I search for 10 minutes, find you 10 stories. Right, Steve? I mean, this is the kind of...
Yeah, well, everyone that I've spoken to, from nationalists to so-called conspiracy theorists to normies to people who are relatively pro lockdown restrictions, almost everyone I've spoken to recently is saying, you know, none of this makes sense. You know, there's a restaurant owner near me who was saying, you know, the goalposts keep changing on us. You know, we're as soon as they announce this new restriction in Greater Manchester, which is only about people meeting in their homes and gardens, the restaurant was dead the next day, even though it doesn't affect people's ability to go to that restaurant. So
confusion, yeah, obviously there's a lot of it's mass confusion. So carry on, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, if you'll allow me, Phil, I mean, I do think I really do believe that what's going on is is a sort of initiation ritual.
Yeah, I've got that article up. Yeah, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
if
It's
you
an
could,
interesting.
if you could, yeah. There's an interesting article I shared with Phil, which is titled "Why You Were Wearing a Mask: The Pagan Ritual of Transformation," and it sounds a bit kind of well, it sounds a bit Christian, to be honest, a bit sort of anti-pagan.
Mhm.
But really, what this article is getting at, it's pointing out the time-honored methods of initiation rituals, which is about breaking down the ego of the subject, the person who's being initiated into a new cult or environment or way of life. The mask is obviously very important to that. You know, those of you who've seen the film Eyes Wide Shut, that gives you a kind of general idea of you know how the mask plays into this kind of breaking down of personal inhibition. And this, you know, this could also actually probably tie into what's potentially going on with you know, child molestation and abuse in the upper echelons. But it's all about taking the subject from the world where they're comfy, where they're everything's familiar, everything is known to them, and you want to bring them into this new world where they are prepared to act in a different manner, where their expectations are different, and you do that by destroying everything that they knew. And you know, masks is an important aspect of that, but also confusion. So you confound the subject with nonsense and you know, irrational means and all of this kind of thing. And I just can't help thinking that everything that's going on now with regards to this this hoax virus, it's all there to confuse us, to destroy that part of us which thinks critically, to reprogram us not to think critically anymore, to just accept whatever nonsense is presented to us, either on pain of you know, the law, which I don't think is actually much of a threat at all to people who refuse to wear masks in shops and things, but also, but mainly it's this idea of social pressure. So that's the way that people are being reprogrammed, is they don't want to upset their peer group, their neighbors, their local shopkeepers. So they're going along with it, even though none of it makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's quite a bit to back this up. If you go, I mean, these are ancient, as Steve said there, ancient types of initiations where they want to move you. And we know in modern psychology, they got, well, not the guy that founded NLP, but the man behind it, what it was taken from. The first thing he used to do when a client walked into his room was he would play with the handshake in some way. He would do something that would leave them confused and a bit bewildered at what was going on, and then he would say one sentence, and that would set the foundation for changing that person's whole perspective. He was very successful, and this is why two Jewish men, I believe, took his work and developed it into what we now call NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And the reason he did this, the reason he did this little sleight of hand and the handshake to confuse the clients, was because in the moments of confusion and shock, these are the two primary areas where you're completely susceptible to reprogramming new information. This is obviously, you can logically play this out from our ancient ancestors who, when they were in tribal groups and something confused them, a noise or something, when you're in that state of confusion, what you're doing is looking for an order. So anybody that does know what's going on, you're programmed to. So if somebody says duck, you just duck. Yeah, you don't ask why you're going to duck. You duck because you've heard something. You're in a confused state. Someone said duck. You're just going to get down. So that it's an abuse of that innate instinct.
And the person that's calling the shots is automatically then, in your perception, placed themselves as the authority.
Yes.
So they've, from then onwards, you are in a position beneath that person. You are in a position where they are the authority.
Yes.
In with regards to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and James, the article, I've put the title up there, Why You Are Wearing a Mask, the Pagan Ritual of Transformation. And as we've said, I mean, kneeling as well, we can bring that into this idea of a new king, a new age, something that's to my mind, if we want to go into a little bit of the, well, say esoteric or some kind of hidden idea here, if we want to go down that road a little bit, I mean, we've had the kneeling, which obviously you've had the mass, the transformation ritual. Then you're down on your knees. As essentially, it appears, if you look at it from a historical sense, that it's the crowning of a new king or subservience to a new king, which would fit in with this transformation ritual. We're being brought into essentially a new age, if you want to put it bluntly. Now, and something I always like to add with this, whether you believe this or not, it is almost goes without saying that many of the people that have a lot of power in this world, the people at the very top, they are cultish, and as Steve mentioned earlier, with all of this child sex abuse and scandals, and what's that chemical called in fear? I've heard people talking about that as well.
Adrenochrome.
Yeah, that's being used, but that's produced by the human body. I mean, I'm not so sure what's going on with that, but I heard that was hitting mainstream news, and these are people that actually admit rubbing creams made of foreskins on their face. They're involved in very strange, very, very strange procedures. So even this is something that sometimes people go, oh, this is all nonsense, this is about a pagan ritual. It doesn't matter if you believe it, and this is important to state, if they do, right, Steve? I mean, if they believe it, then it has a reason to be existing. It doesn't matter if you think it's nonsense or not, is all I'm trying to get at there.
Absolutely. And also, I would also point out that we've come to believe that in the Hebraic tradition, there is that it is monotheistic, that there is one God. But I'm sure some of the listeners out there will have looked into this, the idea that actually Jehovah is a tribal god, and it is recognized to be one of many gods. So when we talk about a pagan ritual, what we need to remember is that essentially those who view themselves as our superiors, the powers that be, they are well versed in pagan practice, but it's just not our pagan practice, and it doesn't have the an intent which is in fitting with the European psyche. So the fact that this article is talking about a pagan practice that may be being used against Europeans is not something to be automatically dismissed, because it may well be that Jehovah is a tribal pagan god as opposed to a monotheistic singular god. But that's kind of a side point, but just a qualifier, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Old Testament, is clearly a national deity, and I think even historians and even theologians would even see some evidence of that, whether they want to admit it or not. But we can see this just by the fact that he kills everybody that opposes his tribe, the tribe of Israel, right? I mean, he literally kills them. We probably leave that for maybe that kind of talk, maybe for Mimir's Brunner. But we don't want to. But so I mean, that's just one of the strangeness that's going on here. And let's be honest, if we look at any of the most logical out there, if they want to look at this world that's going on now. And we're seeing more of this with conspiracy theories, and we're getting all of this kind of stuff going on. What we want to look at sometimes is, how do we explain any of this actually logically anyway? I mean, we just showed you there that they're changing rules, and I'll get to Riss in a minute with some stuff that's happening over in Australia, which is much the same. It's nonsense on nonsense that makes no logical reasoning. As I said at the very beginning, if this was a real virus with pandemic, mass killer potential, everything we're doing, it would be insufficient. Everything we're doing would be contradictory. And so we have to come out of the logic of this a little bit and look at it from a slightly different perspective than the purely mainstream logical perspective, because it doesn't make any sense that way. And Rhys, like I say, I was going to just jump over to a story there because I didn't mention it earlier in the madness, where we have Australia also declares, what is the headline of this? Australia declares state of disaster. Yeah, which is a similar story to what we just got from the UK with major incident. Again, we're getting this heavily sensationalized idea. But do you want to talk us through that a little bit there, Rhys?
Yeah, the state of disaster, it's only ever been declared twice, and that's this year. So the first time was for the fires earlier this year.
Yeah.
And now again for the coronavirus. They're kind of saying this is it's kind of like a fire, but it's invisible, you know. That's
yeah. It's blowing through the air. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's quarantine from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. in Victoria. Victoria is the state that's been having it the most at the moment, the most cases, and they've been in the more stricter laws and whatnot. While my state, Queensland's been relatively, we haven't had many cases at all, but we had some people come through the border and they lied about where they'd been, and they lied about having tested positive and stuff, and they just came through. And I don't know, obviously there's no logic with locking down a state and then just waiting for coronavirus to just disappear and just go off the face of the planet, and then we can just open up the borders.
Well, the curfew is like a half lockdown, right? I mean, that's all that it really is. It's like a lockdown for half the day. And what that means is just that you can still go out for exercise in this curfew. You can still do all these kind of bizarre things that if it was, if it was real, you wouldn't be allowing people to go out to exercise if there was a deadly killer virus going around that could wipe out entire cities, right?
Yeah, you can still go to work, you can still go to school. You can still go to the shops for essential things, but I guess during the middle of the day you can do whatever, just after 5 p.m. I mean 8 p.m., 5 a.m. when most people are going to be sleeping for most of that anyway.
Oh yeah, I mean it's. But you've also, just to get a bit more info from Australia for those people that are not paying attention over there, because you guys are in your winter period, right? Your flu season, and you're coming up to the peak of it.
It's sort of like at its peak temperature. Like it's kind of pretty cold at the moment, I guess, for Australian standards.
But you have had lockdowns on borders as well. Like you've had certain travel restrictions over there in Australia where. Between states, certain states.
So Victoria's been locked down for a few weeks now. That's where it's that's where there's been the most cases and whatnot. Sydney now, anyone from Sydney is not allowed to travel to Queensland.
Okay,
but they did. But a few weeks ago or a month or so ago, they did open the border between Queensland and New South Wales, which was originally closed in that first wave. Then they opened it up, but now they're starting to sort of restrict it again. So people from Sydney can't come up here because there's a bunch of cases here. But we've got a cluster now up here in Queensland now, and they're telling us to be on edge. And in 7 days, over the next 7 days, it could dramatically increase.
Well, Perfect Wagnerite just said in the chat, and this is something that is important to know. It says, we see with this story here, you can say cases, that it's changed now. A lot of the headlines have changed with the Manchester story. It's changed from deaths, people dying, to cases primarily. And obviously there's been more testing. And just to clarify here, the test, and this is not like me just saying this, the test is for coronavirus, and that's a group of viruses, one of which is the common cold. So if you test positive on one of these, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got COVID-19. It means you have one of the coronavirus family, which, including the common cold, means that everybody's probably going to get that, or it's going to be in their system. I even believe that the common cold pretty much lives in you all the time, and it's only when your immune system's low that it actually develops. So pretty much nearly everybody's going to test positive. You got anything to say there, Steed, about those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, what we've noticed a lot of lately is almost a kind of media backtracking a little bit. You know, I mean, we were talking privately, myself and Phil and Rhys, before the chat, and from the very beginning, there was the occasional mainstream article, which was almost seemed to be questioning the official narrative of what was emerging at the time. But in the last few days, there seemed to be more prominent kind of front page articles in places like the Daily Mail and, even the BBC and Sky News and things like this, which are outright questioning. There's been an article, I think it was on Sky News, about how some experts are saying that the lockdown itself has caused 20,000 deaths as opposed to the virus. There's been people questioning whether the response to this pandemic has been proportional and things like this. And, I've been kind of scratching my head trying to work out what they're playing at. And I don't want to jump the conversation ahead here, but I'm starting to think that this is more about a economic reset and a kind of social cultural reset than it is about bringing in some kind of medical tyranny. We're all, many of us, myself included, have been kind of fearing this idea of almost like, tanks rolling around with doctors jumping out with a needle ready to, plunge some kind of vaccination into your arm or something. But I'm starting to wonder now whether actually it's been a bit of a kind of misdirection there, and actually what we should be concerned about is this great reset that the World Economic Forum has been talking about, whereby everything that we knew about the kind of so-called wealth equality and opportunities for people of various backgrounds is going to change from here on. I think it's Klaus Schmidt, something like that. The guy from the World Economic Forum has said that this is a perfect opportunity to change the way that society is. So I don't know if that's jumping ahead, Phil, but
no, that's fine. We're already about half an hour in, so it's fine. Yeah, I mean, and I agree. There is obviously no health concern, not real health concern. Recently, a story came out as well, and I didn't line that one up, where they're admitting now that during the lockdown in the UK, most of the deaths, the excess deaths that occurred during the lockdown, were non-COVID related. Even when they were playing tricks with the death certificates, it still didn't show. And we mentioned this in one of our videos months ago, but apparently they've only just seen it, even though it was in their statistics. All of our videos that we made on coronavirus were using their statistics. We weren't using their statistics and showing what they were doing by their own standards was stupid, just like we're seeing now. But yes, it's clearly not a health concern. There is obviously the initiation angle that we talked about at the very beginning. But one of the very real world problems that's going to occur from this, that some people will be belittling at the beginning of this as well, that people were worried about the economy, is small businesses are being crushed at the moment, especially high streets. I mean, they were anyway, trying to compete with these big supermarkets on the edge of town where they got much cheaper rent. Trying to get on the high street was very expensive, and they were suffering anyway. But now they're being smashed. I mean, just think about how many people, food industries, takeaways, eating out food industries is one of the biggest actual markets in a town centre now, because people buy so much online and at the big supermarkets. So having all these restrictions on food places, also nightclubs. How can you go to a nightclub and maintain social distancing? I mean, it's absurd, right? There's so many businesses that are being forced. I mean, they're suffering, and what we're seeing at the moment is they're borrowing or they're getting the grants in this country. We've had like the worst response to helping people with this so-called this crisis, and it is a crisis, but it's man-made. And we've had some of the worst help, so it's all loans. So they're taking these loans, they're trying to survive through this, but in the end, they're just going to end up with the debt, right? So many businesses suffering. Yeah, please, Steve, jump in.
Yeah, Polygon and Sisyphos in the chat have both asked questions or brought up points which actually I think can be tied in
Yeah,
with this.
do it. Go for it, mate.
Polygon has said that the World Economic Forum is saying that nations that support the LGBT, will recover faster. And Sissy Foss said, "Why is Sweden of all nations going its own way?" Now, I've been wondering for a while. Those of us involved in nationalism for the past few years have been watching, with a kind of sense of stupor as to how quickly Sweden is flushing itself down the toilet. And I almost wonder whether they're being rewarded now for that, for their sense of urgency in destroying the native Swedish population and their traditional values, where they've now been almost allowed to get away with less of a crisis during this because of how well they acted within the kind of the framework and the wishes of the global elite. It's almost like we're being held to ransom, so they're telling us that there's this deadly viral threat, but really, and I almost wonder if most people deep down know this, whether actually this is something we're being threatened with by those in charge, rather than something that is happening regardless of those in charge. So when Polygon mentioned about the World Economic Forum saying that LGBT pro nations that are pro that will recover faster, it's almost like it's almost like that there's this internationalist body who are kind of telepathically speaking to the whole world, saying, look, the faster you embrace our vision of this new world, quicker we'll release you from this crisis.
Yeah, I mean, and that's something we've actually seen on smaller scales all throughout this coronavirus situation, right? It's always been, if you do the lockdown, if you do this, if you accept this, then we'll get out of it faster. And like I say, all the measures put in place, like the Manchester measure, is completely confusing. It does nothing. And we really need to... That's what I use when I'm talking to somebody that's like, oh no, but for safety. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. And people don't really believe it either. When we talked about the masks a couple of weeks ago, before they were imposed, nobody was wearing them. Then you have to wear them. Everybody's wearing them, right? Which shows they don't believe that they have any effect, because their logic tells them that they weren't dying last week, so they're probably not going to be dying next week because of things. So we know that there's some strong arming going on, really, right? They're going, do as we say, or you're going to be punished. And Britain is actually one of the countries that's really suffering with this, and we haven't had any real big pushback yet. I did want to cover a quick story that talks. Actually, I'll let you. Have you got any points to finish off with that, Steve? Although it will come up a little bit with the next story, but the next story might take us on a little bit of a different direction. So I just want to make sure you got everything out you wanted to say there, and if Riss has got anything too.
No, I echo what you said there. It's an exercise in compliance, isn't it? It's the fact that we were told that we had to start wearing masks on a certain day, and I think all of us have commented that there was a noticeable increase in the number of people wearing masks on that day.
Yeah.
Well, if those people truly believed that the masks actually help prevent spread of the virus, why weren't they wearing them before the government told them they had to wear them? So it really is just an exercise in look, we are going to tell you when to jump and how high.
Exactly.
You are going to learn to do it exactly when we say and exactly how we say.
And like you said, if you do it correctly, you'll be rewarded. Like you're saying, is a possibility with Sweden, right? If you follow our game, then you get it easier. And that's how. I mean, that's literally how the tyrant comes. The tyrant goes, please. It demands that you follow it, and if you don't, it gets punished. I mean, this is even carried out in Hollywood gangster movies, right? You do what I say, and you'll have a great life. I mean, normally especially with these high level threats, it's not do it or we hurt you, or do it or we reward you. It's do it And if you don't do it, we hurt you. If you do it, we reward you. There's no in between. You know what I mean? You got to, but that's probably going a bit deep with it. But Riz, have you got? Yeah, carry on. Sorry, Steve.
Just one quick point. You can almost imagine a victim, of the Rotherham, rape gangs or something, being told, look, if you keep quiet, then we'll rape you less often. It's almost like that. So you get into this Stockholm syndrome situation where the victim thinks, well, my captor is being quite nice to me. They're offering to rape me less if I'm more compliant. It feels like that's the kind of society we're becoming.
Yeah. Rhys, have you got any points on that, mate? Or any
maybe just I was going to say, like, I do see some people wearing masks around here, even though it's known that there's barely any cases here. So it's kind of just they're putting on the uniform and going, look, I'm a good boy and girl.
Yeah.
I'm doing this already. And
there is a lot of virtue signaling going on as well, for sure. I mean, it's almost like for some of these people on social media, it's like an excuse to post a picture of them, right? Hey, look at me in my mask. I mean, and something I was actually joking with racial consciousness off air last night was like the way they're becoming designer now. You've got all the top designers actually making masks. They're becoming a fashion accessory, right? Which is completely. I mean, it just makes it even more absurd and shows us more. But one thing I did want to, quickly jump to here, and I've got it. I'm just trying to. I don't know where I've put that, but it was. I'm gonna have to get that up quickly, but it was the one coming out of Germany where they had a big protest about wearing a mask. Was it about wearing a mask, Steve? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it was a general protest against lockdown measures in general, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I've got it here anyway now, so I'll be able to put it up. But this is where we're being, and we touched upon this on the last show, where they're conflating people that abide by the rules as good, liberal. As we said there, if you accept LGBTQ XYZ, as they put in a rather amusing way. If you're a conformist, you're kind of the left-wing Black Lives Matter supporter, etc., etc. And if you're non-conformist, if you decide, you know what, I don't really want to wear a mask, I think it's kind of stupid, there's no logical reason to be actually wearing this mask, then suddenly you are considered, as I'm going to read here from this Twitter post here. This was the scene in Berlin where an estimated 17,000 people defied social distancing and mask requirements to join a protest supported by neo-Nazi groups, conspiracy theorists, and others who said they were fed up with the restrictions. So if you don't want to wear a mask, I mean, you're literally a Nazi, right? And a conspiracy theorist Nazi to boot. Yeah, so that's the. If we've got anything to add on that, but this is how insane it's getting, right?
Yeah,
there seems to be a lot more people there than what they're actually saying.
I looked at a lot of photos and I agree. But they've done this before with protests. They completely under number. I mean, look how far that's going back. There's clearly more than 17,000 there in that video. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Steve, do you want to say something there?
Yeah, I mean, since I've been involved with nationalism, yeah, and I also came at it from a kind of so-called conspiracy theorist angle. Mm-hmm. So since getting involved with or researching both of those kind of trains of thought, what I've come to realize is that those two groups represent the two most identifiable, genuine dissident groups to the status quo: the conspiracy theorists and the nationalists. But nationalists almost never want to be called conspiracy theorists, and conspiracy theorists almost always don't want to be called nationalists. So by conflating the two, as they've been doing recently in Germany, America, UK, wherever, they're really they're really putting people off of speaking up, of admitting that they are against this, because those people who feel comfortable being a so-called conspiracy theorist don't feel comfortable being called a Nazi, because they still believe that Hitler did this and Hitler did that. And those who are nationalists, as has been seen in some of these kind of alt-right figures recently, they mock these kind of in inverted commas boomer conspiracy theories. So they are desperate not to be lumped in with them. So the media is playing a very clever game here, where they're frightening both camps off by conflating the two, I think.
Yeah, I mean, but one thing I'll say to try and bridge that gap a little bit, right? If you're anti-globalist, if there's somebody that's more conspiracy theory orientated, as they call it, conspiracy theory, when in fact some of it is actually conspiracy fact by now. But if you're one of those people that are labelled that, and you're you see that there is an elite group, which both sides, even nationalists, agree with. You see that there's an elite group of people at the top that are calling the shots, and they're not very nice people. Yeah, they're doing all sorts of things, and they're pushing agendas like hoaxes, etc., etc., whatever it is. Then you are anti-globalist. You know they're trying to bring in this big global one world government, etc. Sorry about that, a bit of bang upstairs. Well, then the only opposition, or true opposition, to globalism is nationalism. I mean, literally, there is no other way you can cut it. You can't have a globalism, but there's either globalism or there's nation states. There's one world altogether, or there's a world divided into nation states. So it is the only true opposition to globalism is nationalism. And for the conspiracy side, for the nationalists, well, if you say that you believe your people are being destroyed, which we can all see clearly, we can see the mass immigration, the mass movement of people to our nations, then you're considered a conspiracy theorist. If you have some qualms about some numbers over in Germany in the early 1940s, then you are pretty much mad as a hatter compared by a normie standards, and you are a massive conspiracy theorist. So they both dislike being called one term or the other, but they're both you're pretty much labelled that. If you're a conspiracy theorist and you bring up the Rothschilds, for example, you're going to get lumped into with the Nazis immediately anyway, because of the implications of just bringing up the Rothschilds, right? So it's about time we put aside and just looks at things for what they are. Yeah. As a nationalist, I know that there are things that I'm being lied to. As conspiracy theorists, I know that there are things I am being lied to. If you put the dots together, there's not that much difference. And I'm not talking about completely out there ideas or insane, but as a nationalist or modern day nationalist, we know that there are dodgy. We're just sitting here talking about coronavirus. Some people this is complete conspiracy theories. But if you're a coronavirus denier, you're a Nazi. So they're grouping us together. So we need to try and look at each other's points a little bit better, maybe. And anyway, I went on a bit of a rant there. But Rhys, have you got anything to add there to the whole conspiracy theorist, nationalist type deal?
Maybe just that we could use that, hopefully, to bring it together and use it kind of against them, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, that's something. Yeah, that tees us right up for the next bit. Something we wanted to talk about. We had a quick 10-minute discussion beforehand. And we wanted to look at some of the positives out of this, because, I mean, it is crazy. As I cover more with the RC show, we show how the media, we covered last night's show, we talked about how the media is really ramping up the attack on anything they call right-wing, which right-wing or Nazi or whatever is just your pro-white or even just not anti-white at this point. They're saying that there's a rise in all this far-right terrorism. Again, very similar to the story coming out of Manchester and the stories coming out of Australia, Melbourne, etc. There's a non-story there. There's nothing happened. It's just they've decided that they're going to write that headline. forgot my trail of thought there a little bit, but
I'll take over if you want.
yeah, go for it, mate.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier about this idea of an initiation ritual, and I think what's important to realize there is that it's as much that is as applicable to those of us who know that it's a initiation ritual and know that it's a farce, as to those who are sleepwalking into it. And I think we need to embrace that to an extent. You know, I know several people close to me who, since this all began, they've really taken an active interest in so-called conspiracy theories, you know, and they're missing the mark here and there. They're still sharing memes with me about, you know, how you know, how Hitler supposedly said that the bigger the lie, the easier it is to fool people, even though we know that what he was talking about was he was criticizing the tactics used by his ideological opponents.
Yeah, and that's a factual statement. That's what he was saying about them. It wasn't.
Absolutely, but you know that these are these kind of just like what we were just talking about, these kind of conspiracy theorists who are so or believe they're so fundamentally opposed to the idea of nationalism that they have to speak out against the Nazis. They have to try and almost compare what's going on now with what the Nazis were doing and this kind of thing. But nevertheless, you know, lots of previous normie friends and people I know, normie friends of theirs, are now engaging with all of this, and all of us are going through this change at the moment. And for someone like myself, I've almost been expecting something like this for the last 15 years or so, but I've never been quite certain when or if it would happen in a tangible enough way where I could say, right, game on kind of thing. Now I can say that with certainty that this is a battle, and there's no room for fence sitters anymore. And I've actually found it quite liberating, because now I will openly say to people, this is where I stand on this. This is what I believe. I've got the facts to back it up. You can take it or leave it. I will respect your view if you respect mine, but I'm not going to pretend that I don't know what's going on here. And that's a liberating thing that I think we could all take that on board. We could all see this as an opportunity for us to become a soldier for righteousness. What we know is the right side of the right side of history. We are on it, and if we don't take our place in the ranks of that, then that's I almost feel like that there's a shame involved in that now. Our children curse us if we don't stand against this. Whether it be the COVID hoax or the Black Lives Matter tearing down our heritage and our history. If we don't stand against this or show that we did something or registered our opposition to it, then our children, our grandchildren, they will curse us. And there's no doubt about that now.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and we've got to take, as I said, the moment of confusion is where they're looking for people to direct them. We're just as, they have mass media. They can reach 1 million people, but there's probably 1 million of us, and each of us can reach a couple. Yeah, and so we have the potential to get in there too. And there's a lot of questions going on. Before I just move on with this, somebody asked, you need a nation to be a nationalist. Well, what nation is left? If I am one man and I was the last Englishman alive, I'd be a nation. Okay, so your nation is your blood. It is who you are. So nationalism exists as long as ethnic groups exist, and ethnic groups do exist, despite what the media was saying.
Borders can change, regimes can change. Look at the fluctuations of the German border. It's changed drastically over the last 1,000 years or so. Yet there still is a German nation, which is the body of people with German blood and culture and language.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but we've got to use this time in the confusion to get our own points across. And although as coronavirus is an easier one to get people into, because it's less. I mean, although they're trying to make it, everybody I disagree with is a Nazi argument. But also the Black Lives Matter as well is getting people. We've seen with what we would consider very normie people that we know, that where they were in support of it at the beginning, they've started to become very tired of it, and not just tired of it, but starting to get actually actively anti it, because they're being blamed and constantly told, well, now if you're colorblind, which people from my generation, kind of all of us here, me, Rhys and Steed, from all of our generations, was kind of like color blindness was pushed to us in the schools. It was pushed to us or through the media, etc. Now that's racist, right? So, and now they're seeing them push and demand, and people that once were not so much supportive of them but could sympathize with them are starting to see the points that people like myself made to them many years ago, right? So there's a moment, like Steve said, of almost liberation. What we thought was happening is coming out. We were saying for a very long time that ethnic nationalism is the way to go, because this mixture of people won't work. And they would point to people out arguing, "Oh, look, it's working. Everybody's out there. Everybody's getting on." Now we're seeing this fracturing within the society, where only yesterday we had a militia group. Believe it or not, we don't have militias in the UK. One, because we can't own any kind of weapon, so it makes the militia kind of useless in what a militia is meant to do, to keep the government in check. And we had a black militia group. Actually, I've got a picture. I've got a few pictures. There are no mainstream stories on this black militia either, which is just an interesting one there. I don't know. Oh, there it is. Here we've got the black militia there. So they were marching through Brixton, but people are seeing this. And when people see this, they start to come over to our points. Hold on. Maybe we can't just all live together, right? And the same with the coronavirus, opening people up to the idea that maybe my government is lying to me. Maybe my government isn't looking out for my best interests. Yeah, these are all chinks in the armor that we can use, just as they are trying to use. When anybody pushes, when everybody makes a deal, when it's a gamble. You know, when you raise the stakes, yeah, we've got to match those stakes, and if we can, put the stakes a little higher, catch them off guard. But there's an opportunity, is what I'm saying. Would you agree, there, Steve?
Yeah, I would. And to go back to a point you made a moment ago, our generation, we were raised to on this this premise of colorblindness, and I think a lot of people are feeling cheated because they almost sacrificed what they instinctively knew to be correct and true for this idea of a colorblind society, and they believed that would work, and that was the best compromise between preserving some kind of native culture, but also not descending into, you know, Nazi Germany. This is the kind of lie that they bought into, and now they're being told, forget that. You know, you've spent the last 25 years of your life since you were young at school being, you know, building this upon this premise, and now forget it. Actually, there is such a thing as you know, color, and if you don't recognize it, then you are the problem. And I just don't understand, and many people in our circles are pointing this out now, but I don't understand how you can be a civic nationalist at this point. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of an absurd position, because the multicultural people call it an experiment, but it was never an experiment. Just to clarify my position on what it was about. It was about division. Just as the more divided a people, the easier you are to rule. This has been known in battle tactics for millennia.
It's the oldest tactic, yeah.
Yeah, and when you can't create natural division within a group, you can import division. They are literally importing division, and then they go, "Hey, you're being divisive." It's like, no, you were being divisive by bringing people of a completely different culture, a completely different background, a completely different set of morality to my nation, and then saying, "Hey, man, you're pointing out that they're different, so you're bringing division." No, you brought the division. We're noticing the division. And as we see, they notice it too. They always constantly bang on about the idea, or they're being told by media, of course, they're being hyped by media. Although media will never get any blame for it. They were being hyped by media to go, hey, you white man owe me something. Recently as well, there was a story, they're going to celebrate BAME. This is people of colour, essentially, in the UK. They keep calling them BAME. They're going to push this idea that they're saying they need to celebrate the BAME people that built Britain. I mean, what an absurd statement. Yeah. These people here, every one of those people in those photographs, I guarantee none of their descendants were here before, unless they're mixed race and they've mixed with some of the natives. None of their black heritage was here before 1940. None of it. So when they tell me that they want to celebrate black people, there was the odd black person somewhere, some place in the UK that you might be able to point to that might have done something at some point. But when you weigh that against the millions upon millions of native Brits that have done something over the last several millennia, it's nothing. So when they want to celebrate some random, obscure, non-native from some weird epoch. You see it all the time. Google love doing it with their things where they're randomly throw in some black person nobody had ever heard of before because what they'd done was so insignificant. And their perfect Wagnerite has just put up the 1951 census, 98.7% white British. Which shows, and it's we're losing ground fast on that, by the way. The last census was 2011, sorry. And I think in Britain we were about 80%. So, and it's moving fast. And some people do believe that a lot of these censuses are not quite accurate because a lot of these people that are illegal don't put their names down on censuses. We have the same thing in for any of our US listeners. The same thing in by definition, illegal immigrants don't fill in census forms, right? Rhys, have you got anything to say on all of this craziness we're talking about here? I know we've jumped over a few topics since we last heard from you, so feel free to jump in
that's
anyway.
good. I completely agree. I'm just gonna say, like, yeah, that's true about the census. Like I remember when I was younger, like living in a share house, and the census was delivered to our house, and I don't even think we filled it out. You know, we were just young, we didn't really care. So I can't imagine, these immigrants that come in and they wouldn't even read the mail; just throw it in the bin.
An illegal immigrant isn't going to declare. I mean, although it doesn't matter anymore, we have now openly councils and institutions in this country. That I saw an article about an illegal immigrant. I believe they were in Wales somewhere, and the whole community was like rally, or the whole, not really the whole community, but the virtue signals in that community were rallying around them, trying and helping them and aiding them. Well, is that not aiding and abetting a criminal? I've seen in the US universities giving, not only allowing them to be educated in the university and illegal immigrants in the US, but also giving them digs and lodging. Now, I mean, these things, they're called illegal immigrants because they're illegal. They've committed a crime. It is illegal what they're doing. So surely if I help somebody commit a crime, if somebody robs a shop and I take some of their goods, I'm aiding and abetting, right? And I'm receiving stolen goods. I'm doing something that helps the crime. But it seems it doesn't matter with these crimes, that if you're aiding and abetting illegal immigrants, that you're actually praised and can have whole media articles written about you and held up as some virtuous leader. I don't know if you got anything to add. I had a bit of a rant around a few subjects there against these. So if you've got anything to say,
No, I think you've covered it all. The only the only point I'd make is that in the UK, political uniforms are actually illegal.
Yeah.
So this photo that we see on the screen right now of this,
and they have got a designed logo, right, as well. You can't really see it there, but it
absolutely a uniform that. And what are their aims if not political? So you know, I mean, a couple of years ago, National Action, one of the grounds upon which they were banned was that they had a form of uniform. And is the same going to happen to this lot? You know, I think we all know the answer to that.
No, I mean, it's interesting. Honestly, I was trying to find some articles. I could only find one article written on it. This was with some digging, and it was an article from a site called Britannia News. So it's not a mainstream article for anybody watching in the US. It's obviously a nationalist article. So I've never come across it before, so I can't talk about it too much. But this is as bad as mainstream as it gets for this story being covered anywhere here. And there wasn't actually an interesting quote in here. Nigel Farage said something about it. Nigel Farage said he was terrifying to see this. I'm not really terrified. They look like LARPers. But anyway, but Green Party leader, according to this website, I haven't been able to verify this or not verify it. I haven't really looked. Green Party leader Jonathan Bartley said, "You are just trying to create division." Remember what I said earlier about it's our fault. We're creating division. They're marching down the street demanding that their lives matter. But if we notice this, we're the dividers. If we notice the division, we're the ones doing the dividing. And anyway, to carry on the quote, but these people in Brixton today know that love and justice will conquer the fear. Okay, and hate, the hate. I'm assuming, and the hate that you peddle. Oh, I get it. Sorry, I misread that. The conquer the fear and hate that Mr. Farage apparently peddles. Hope is what people need right now, and they are showing the pathway towards it. So there you go. Any comments on that quote there, lads?
I find it interesting that Farage said that he finds it terrifying. I'd like to know why he's given that he is a civic nationalist. Essentially, all we're seeing there are a bunch of non-white people who are gathering in a group. What is it about that Farage finds terrifying, if not the combination of their skin color and their their attire?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things, and I would like to point this out because I mean, I used to enjoy watching Farage's speeches in the EU Parliament. He was very funny, very witty. He's a very good speaker. But the idea that Brexit will stop immigration, especially non-white immigration, is a complete lie. Just so people understand this, Brexit will not stop it. In fact, the Conservative government has agreed already that if we left Brexit tomorrow, it's already agreed that it wants to take double the number of immigrants than the EU was requiring. All Brexit will stop is the freedom of movement between EU nations, which does give us some non-European immigration through people going to one country, getting the Dutch citizenship or German citizenship, then they can just move to the UK as an EU resident. But and it will stop Eastern European or whatever from moving here. But it will not stop Africans. It will not stop Arabs from coming here. And as I say, the Conservative government already agreed to take double the EU quotas of these immigrants anyway. So the whole of the Brexit debacle was kind of a smokescreen. So people were protesting it mostly because they wanted to stop Islamic immigration, from the more normie and kosher nationalism of people like Tommy the Midget. So they were voting for Brexit to stop Islamic immigration, and leaving the EU was going to do nothing to stop Islamic immigration. Sorry, I went off a bit of a tangent there, but it's something that people really need to kind of understand. Farage appears to be against, like you say, what's he against here? These brown people is he against? Because he's a civic nationalist, so that shouldn't matter. But they kind of fight this lie that they're against Islamic immigration or African immigration when they're not. Yeah, there's nothing in Brexit that will stop that. Nothing at all. But it was kind of sold to us that way, and I saw so many nationalists get caught up in it. Now, I'm not saying leaving the EU is a bad thing at all. No, I believe we should leave the EU, but it really is not an immigration issue. It's more an issue for fishing rights, which is destroying the northeast of Britain. And it's more issues for about those things than it is an immigration issue. It's not going to stop African and Islamic immigration.
It almost feels irrelevant now with everything that's happened in 2020, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's been brought into some hard focus for sure. Yeah. I mean, is it? I don't even. I'm not even sure what's going on with Brexit anymore. To be totally honest with you, it's one of those stories that goes on and on and on and on, and it's never quite finished. It's just about going to be finished, and it gets.
Yeah, there was still talk of them extending it because of the coronavirus, but it wasn't set in stone or anything.
Yeah, obviously, coronavirus is going to affect it. It's affected everything else, right?
I think it's if I could just slightly take this on a tangent, I think it's this idea of learned helplessness. And I went and met with Edric the other night, and we were talking about friends that we have who were previously passionate nationalists who have almost withdrawn themselves from the arena because they're so disheartened by everything that's going on. And I think that's a very deliberately created state of mind. And Brexit is part of that because, how long is it? 3.5 years ago or whatever that we voted to leave, and it still hasn't happened. And as well with the whole coronavirus, the Black Lives Matter and stuff, there's no one fighting our corner, and there's no promise of anyone fighting our corner. The Tories have betrayed us to a degree that's barely imaginable. To anyone who still had faith in them. I mean, I don't think I've ever.
And the same for the Labour Party. Same for the Labour Party for the white working classes. Completely betrayed and actually ridiculed now by the Labour Party that used to be their staunch allies or professed to be, but they were always founded by the I forgot the name now, but they have a wolf in sheep's clothing literally as their emblem.
Fabian Society.
Fabian Society. So you should never have trusted them, but at least in the past they pretended to support these people. Now they openly mock them for things like Brexit, call them low IQ, etc., etc.
Gammon,
gammon, gammon, literally low IQ gammon. It's. I mean, this is the state of our nation at the moment. And sorry, I interrupted your point there, Steve.
Well, no, not really. I was pretty much finished, but I think. What we need to, I mean, personally, I do believe that politics is a dead end. I really do, because I think the whole system has been rigged for a very, very long time. I was around when the BNP were at their height, and they were essentially outlawed by the Equalities Commission because of their manifesto. Fundamental aspects of their manifesto were essentially made unlawful or illegal, I should say. So I don't really, I mean, I in principle, I do support Patriotic Alternative and everyone involved with that. And I do wish them the best in everything they're trying to achieve. But at the moment, I don't understand how they plan to sidestep these kind of legal attacks from the establishment.
I think
I'll be interested to see how they do.
For me personally, and I've always been an advocate of this, and I will, politically, it's got to be local politics. You can get a lot done in local politics, and you can actually get voted in. You're not going to, even if you got one or two people into the main parliament of the UK, you're not going to get anywhere with that. But on a local level, you can get in, and you can be very populist to what's happening in that area, and you can organise rallies against new housing developments, right? I mean, I saw an article, and I wish I got it up. The amount of new housing developments going on in the UK at the moment to house these immigrants. There's whole communities all over the nation, all separate, rallying against these housing developments. I mean, you could really, as a local elected councillor, whatever, you could really go in there and wake people up on a big level. Yeah. only in your small community, but you would have the potential to waking up a whole community to the dangers of the immigration policy. And if we had 100 or 1,000 of us nationalists doing that in each of our little local areas, yeah, you can start to make waves. And I think till you've made some really big waves with local politics, I agree with Steve completely. There's no point trying to go for the big game when you can't play the small game. Do you know what I mean? It's like trying to play in the Premier League or whatever in a football analogy when you haven't even done any work in the non-leagues. Yeah, you can't even win a game in the non-league. So you've got to really, if you want to go down the political route, and I do encourage it, local's the way to go. And if there's something happening in your area, like the movement of immigrants into your area, new developments in your area, these are all places where populist support will get you voted in. You know.
Yeah. I've just shared a link with you to a BBC article about how new homes are now going to get automatic planning permission. You know, so that just ties into what you're saying. It's a subject that's very close to the heart of lots and lots of English people, because we live on this island, which is England is I think the most densely populated major country in Europe, above even Belgium and the Netherlands, and yet they're just insisting on building as many new homes on as much land as possible.
And they're disgusting homes as well, right, Steve? These are just horrible looking. There's no beauty in them at all. Sorry, I just had to point that out.
Yeah, so no, I think you're right. I think a good way to get involved is with local communities and trying to stand against these. Even if we don't succeed in putting a stop to the building of new housing estates, we might be able to build social capital, so to speak, with those in who are part of that movement, and we might be able to bring them round to some of our other ideas. We might be able to form bonds with them that would be useful in other ways.
True alliances, unlike the fake alliances. They say you need to be a white ally of black people. Well, that's not an alliance. It's actually an abused relationship. And I was going to do a video on that, but I haven't written it yet. But true alliances where people can see, and alliances in real life, I know this is something that Steve's very much a promoter of, trying to make alliances in real life, the same as racial consciousness is as well. They both agree on that. And what better way to do it than standing up against things that people don't want in their area? The not in my backyard idea shows people's real feelings about this, okay? They can parade on Facebook all they want or virtue signal left, right, and center. But you want to build somebody, as soon as they say they're going to build some new housing development in your area and fill it with people with immigrants, they don't. That's the truth, right? And we got to get people to understand that not wanting to have your place invaded by people that don't share your morality, don't share your ethics, right? Don't share your way of life. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's you want to be around your own, and that's a psychological basic requirement. Most people want to be around people that are like them. It's why even when in our racial groups I like this type of music. I like that band. I like this sport. We congregate in groups of people are like us. The more like us we are, the happier we are in that group. I mean, this is just fundamental human psychology. It's not bad. It's not nasty. It's not evil. Right. Rhys, have you got anything to add on some of the stuff we've been talking? Is there any? I mean, you have local politics over there in Australia, and I'm sure that the similar tactics, similar ideas could be used over there, although I don't know about these. Obviously, Australia is a very big landmass, but I don't know how much of it is fully habitable, right?
Yeah, I guess that would be the hardest part. Is it's harder to sort of, meet up. We're so spread out. It's kind of difficult here in that sense.
Yeah, although we do, there are people that listen to us in Australia, especially over on a Mimir channel. Which is a little bit bigger than this one. So I'm sure. I tell you what, though, I think you'd be surprised, and Steve may be able to vouch for this too. you'd be surprised that when you start talking more openly, how many people that you would never expect that share, that sympathize with our position, but just for whatever reasons don't want to get involved with it. Normally personal reasons of jobs, etc., etc. Or in some cases, they just haven't come across our kind of talking points. I mean, I've literally met people that don't know people like us exist. They've just they just don't mix in those circles. And when you mention things to them, they're actually quite in a bit of shock, actually. And I've had people shake my hand and all sorts just for talking to them. I don't know if you've had any similar experiences, Steve, where you've seen people that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but they're all around you, people that would agree with us if they could hear us at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we have to remember that those who support the current mainstream narrative are emboldened because their views are state sanctioned.
Yes.
Of course,
Great
they're going to be
point,
loud.
yeah.
Of course, they're going to appear to be the majority, but that's only because they're louder, because they're able to be louder. But I do believe that the majority broadly share our views. You know, that they may not be as far down the path as we are, but
if you took away the buzzwords and just explained them rationally, I think they'd be completely with us. To be honest, if you took away the buzzwords that the media uses and just explain to them in a logical form what we believe, I think they did. I think they'd cheer a speech that you could. Do you get what I'm saying? If you took away the certain words that we know are going to freak them out, essentially.
Yeah, because they've been programmed with those particular buzzwords. So that's definitely one tactic that we should be focusing on, is the way that we talk about our worldview. We need to learn what words, how to word our beliefs in a way which doesn't immediately raise alarm bells with people who have been raised on mainstream news and things like that. Because as you just said, you know, if you put it in a very, very reasonable way, because everything about our worldview is reasonable.
Yes.
Absolutely everything. We just need to express it in a way which seems as reasonable to everyone around us.
And it's why they've demonized so many of these ideas, because they have to. Because if you look at certain ideas from history that have been heavily demonized, you'll see instinctively almost the common sense within it. So the best way to keep you away is to not get you to look. But yeah, I mean, and there's so many ways we can get out, and I do want to focus more on with Mim's Council and even Mim's Brunner, focus more on practical solutions to our problems. It's but I mean, I suffer as well from the fatigue that Steve was talking about of nationalists. It can get very I put a lot of energy into all of this, and there's a lot of energy I need to put elsewhere. And sometimes you can feel like you can feel like you're banging your head against the wall. And I know Rhys can sympathise with me here because of the work he puts in. And there's also the doubt within us that I don't have all the answers, and I don't claim here and sit here to pretend I do. And nothing leads like example, and I don't like saying things necessarily till I've done them, because if I'm not doing them, I can't expect you to. But like I say, one of the biggest problems we have is time and energy. I have a small family. I know that Steve has a family. We both have to work, and it's getting the time and energy. So I mean, this is where we really do need to start forming. And this is something I will give patriotic alternative kudos for. They've got together a community there. And I really do hope that those guys can make some headway. Right, those good men and women can do something over there. Because even if I'm doubtful of what somebody's potential is within a certain area, I don't really want to discourage them from doing it, if you know what I mean. All ideas are, till we've won, all ideas are valid, right? If you get what I'm saying, yeah. If you've got an idea and you think it's going to work, go for it. But we've got to start. I do think that grassroots movements and I believe that things like housing planning are really key areas that we can really we can really protest and get involved with that could, as Steve said in a funny way, get us some social credit, right, with the average person as well, and give us a chance to interact with people that we wouldn't normally interact with and explain our ideas. And like Steed and myself, when I talk about, and I'm sure Riss does, when we talk about ideas, we don't have to get angry. We just have to explain calmly what we believe and why we believe it. There doesn't have to be a fierce attack. And if somebody goes a bit crazy at you, let them. Especially if there's others watching. Just show them their irrationality. The same with this mask stuff, right? Have you seen, there's loads of videos out there at the moment of people that are not wearing masks, and then somebody that wears a mask freaking out, spraying them with pepper spray, etc., going absolutely insane. Yeah. Well, that just helps us. Yeah, we've got to remain level-headed and reasonable and put our arguments good to the people. It's not going to work to the media because, as Steve rightly pointed out, which is a great point, the reason they're loud is because they're allowed to be. Yeah. And anyway, we're gonna have to wrap up pretty soon, but I'm open to obviously I'm open to you guys having any final thoughts on tonight's show or anything that we didn't bring up that you want to bring in. I'll take Steed first, and we'll give Riss the second one. So, Steed, is there anything that we might have missed tonight?
No. I think we covered everything. It was a good discussion. I just think it and I've been guilty of this, of getting too kind of obsessed with this whole situation and almost feeling a frustration that I'm not able to do. I constantly feel like I should be doing something all the time because this does feel like the fight of our lives. But I think we need to be very careful about how we manage our time, and we need to make sure that we don't dedicate all of our time to this feeling of helplessness and negativity and stuff. Obviously, we need to stay engaged with it because this is a fight, and we do have to fight it. But we need to make sure we dedicate plenty of time to family, to friends, to spending time in nature, to enjoying the music that we love or the films that we love, or our spiritual practice if we have any, our reading, things like that. We can still enjoy life to a great extent despite what's being done to us. And not only does that give us more resolve to spend some time fighting, it also reminds us of why we're fighting.
Yeah, great points there, Steve. Riss, have you got any final thoughts for us, mate? And I know Riss is a little bit quiet, he gets a little bit nervous, but he's a great guy and he's got a lot of good ideas and he puts a lot of those in the videos, as I said. So, any final thoughts for us there, mate?
I don't have a lot to add. It's just, I guess this whole situation just makes us more appreciative of what we could lose, and makes us yearn more to get out in nature and whatnot as well. So I'd agree. We have to balance that and make sure we don't just wear ourselves out.
Yeah, balance is a key. I mean, something I need to learn a little bit because I can get very into something and have lots of ideas and then start putting them into practice and kind of wear myself out a little bit faster than I thought. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's been good to interact. When I've got more people on, I can interact with the chat a little bit more, and it's good to read the comments. And some really insightful ones we've had tonight. So thanks for tuning in, because without anybody tuning in, it would be completely pointless. Well, it wouldn't be completely pointless. I'd have fun chatting with these guys any night of the week anyway. So, and thanks, Steed, for joining us, and thanks, Riss, for joining us. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, good to speak to you guys.
Problem. It was great.
And I'll bid you all good night, and be well, and get out there and fight in whatever way you feel you need to, and make the connections, as Steve said, because that's important. You need to be reminded why you're fighting, what you're doing, what you're doing it for. And I have a beautiful family, and so I know why I'm here. Hope you guys got the same. So be well, and speak soon.